In the midst of the Cold War, the Soviet Union was rapidly expanding its nuclear capabilities, not just for military might, but also for powering its burgeoning cities and industries. The country was ambitious, pushing the boundaries of nuclear technology to showcase its strength and progress. At the heart of this nuclear program was a series of reactors known as RBMKs, a Russian acronym for High Power Channel Type Reactor. Unique to the Soviet Union, the RBMK was designed to produce both plutonium for weapons and electricity for civilian use. This dual-purpose design, however, came with inherent risks and complexities. Unlike other reactor designs of the time, RBMKs used graphite as a moderator to slow down neutrons, allowing a continuous chain reaction, and water as a coolant, a combination that could become unstable in certain conditions. Despite the design's economic and military advantages, the RBMK had several safety flaws. As early as the 1970s, scientists had identified potential dangers. Instead of halting these projects, Soviet officials continued construction and operation, confident in their technological prowess. In April 1986, engineers at the Chernobyl Nuclear Power Plant, near the town of Pripyat in Ukraine, prepared for a safety test on reactor number 4. The test was meant to ensure that in the event of a power outage, the reactor would safely shut down. Unfortunately, a series of human mistakes during this test, combined with the RBMK's design weaknesses, led to the reactor's power levels surging uncontrollably, resulting in a catastrophic explosion on the 26th of April. On April 26, 1986, a routine safety test at the Chernobyl Nuclear Power Plant went catastrophically wrong. The test, intended to simulate a power outage, required a gradual shutdown of reactor number 4. However, due to a series of critical mistakes by operators and inherent flaws in the reactor design, what followed was anything but routine. At 1:23 a.m., the core of the reactor exploded, blasting off a 2,000-ton lid and releasing 400 times more radioactive material than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Amidst the confusion, the plant's workers struggled to understand what had occurred, initially unaware that they were dealing with a full-scale nuclear meltdown. The valiant first responders, including firefighters and plant workers, rushed to the scene, though ill-equipped and uninformed about the gravity of radiation they were facing. As they fought the inferno, high doses of ionizing radiation infiltrated their bodies, sealing the fates of many. The nearby town of Pripyat, with its population of almost 50,000 residents, lay dormant as invisible radiological particles drifted through the air. The local authorities delayed the evacuation, underestimating the severity of the situation. It would be a full 36 hours before the order to leave was given, exposing thousands more to dangerous levels of radiation during this critical period. The timeline of this calamity unfolded quickly, yet the response was tragically slow, marred by misinformation and a lack of preparedness for such an unprecedented disaster. As the heroic efforts continued to quell the flames, the scale of the catastrophe began to emerge, leading to a crisis response that would stretch far beyond the borders of the Soviet Union. As the full magnitude of the Chernobyl disaster began to unfold, the Soviet government found itself grappling with a crisis of unprecedented proportions. The immediate challenge was clear: contain the radiation and mitigate the environmental catastrophe. The task ahead was both monumental and perilous. Crews of workers, now known as liquidators, were swiftly assembled and dispatched to the disaster site. They were given the nearly impossible mission of decontaminating the area and preventing the spread of radioactive material. Without hesitation, these men and women faced the ruins of reactor number 4, exposing themselves to lethal levels of radiation. The construction of a massive steel and concrete structure, the sarcophagus, commenced to encapsulate the remains of the reactor. Conceived in a race against time, this mammoth enclosure was intended to seal off the radiation and contain the hazardous material. By late November of 1986, just over 6 months after the disaster, the sarcophagus, a Herculean effort of engineering under extreme conditions, was completed. The valor and dedication of the liquidators cannot be overstated. Over 600,000 individuals took part in the containment and cleanup operations, many fully aware of the risks involved. Their sacrifices, often made in silence, have left an enduring legacy, highlighting both the perils of the atomic age and the indomitable spirit of humanity when faced with calamity. As we turn the pages of the nightmarish chapter that unfurled at Chernobyl, we must look closely at the immediate health repercussions for the plant workers and the local residents. In the wake of the explosion, those on the front lines, the plant personnel and first responders, were exposed to fatal levels of radiation. The acute radiation sickness they suffered claimed numerous lives within days, while others succumbed over the ensuing weeks. Meanwhile, the unsuspecting inhabitants of nearby Pripyat started experiencing the sinister symptoms of high radiation doses, culminating in long-term health issues. Not long after the catastrophe, a radioactive cloud stealthily drifted beyond the borders of the Soviet Union, casting its toxic breath across Europe. Countries from Ukraine to as far as Sweden detected elevated levels of radioactivity, causing widespread alarm. With an invisible enemy silently invading the skies, the international community was left grappling with this radioactive phenomenon. These unsettling discoveries triggered a pan-European discourse on nuclear safety and emergency responsiveness. The task of assessing the scale of radiation distribution was colossal and complex. It involved deploying a network of scientists and technologists across the affected regions to measure radiation levels in the air, water, and soil. The assessment demanded cutting-edge devices and novel methodologies to trace the radioactive isotopes such as iodine-131 and cesium-137. The ordeal required sustainable cooperation between nations as they sought to chart out contamination zones and create guidelines for mitigating the invisible threat that did not recognize national borders. The specter of Chernobyl casts a long shadow, and nowhere is this more evident than in the long-term health effects felt by countless individuals. Data collected over the years paint a grim picture of increased cancer rates amongst emergency workers and residents in the most heavily contaminated areas. Thyroid cancer, in particular, skyrocketed, especially in children who drank milk from cows that had grazed on contaminated grass. But it wasn't just cancers. A slew of other health issues followed, from cardiovascular diseases to psychological traumas, the full extent of which may take decades to fully comprehend. On an environmental scale, the disaster led to the creation of the exclusion zone, a 30-kilometer radius cordoned off to humans due to high levels of radioactive contamination. Once teeming with life, the area transformed into a post-apocalyptic tableau, its abandonment leading to the unexpected return of wildlife. Wolves, boars, and even bears have been spotted reclaiming the eerie, uninhabited landscapes, reminding us that nature endures despite human error. Studies within this unique zone continue to shed light on radiation's complex effects on ecosystems. Assessing the disaster's socioeconomic impact reveals a tapestry of loss and displacement. Over 350,000 people were forced to relocate, abandoning their homes with little chance of return. The Soviet government was faced with the enormous burden of resettling entire communities, providing welfare for the afflicted and compensating for the interrupted lives. Economically, the disaster drained billions from the coffers, which exacerbated the already faltering Soviet economy. The seismic effects of the disaster resonated not only through the immediate area around Chernobyl, but rippled into the very fabric of global society, reinforcing the reality that the consequences of nuclear disaster are never contained to a single place or moment in time. As we draw this episode to a close, let's take a moment to gather our thoughts on what we've learned from the somber narrative of the Chernobyl disaster. Our journey today has highlighted not only the grim narrative of those fateful days in 1986, but also the broader implications that continue to reverberate through time. The Chernobyl disaster, through its dark chapters, reminds us of the profound impact that technological catastrophes can have on society and the environment. Health consequences, such as an increased incidence of cancer among those exposed to radiation, have left a lasting mark on countless lives. The establishment of the exclusion zone stands as a testimony to the event's environmental repercussions, a zone where nature has reclaimed the poisoned land, ironically flourishing in the absence of human presence, though it is a far cry from the bustling communities that once throve there. Looking to the future, the lessons of Chernobyl serve as a stern message to all of us about risk, responsibility, and progress. It underscores the reality that with great power like the atom comes an even greater responsibility to wield it carefully. The cautionary tale it presents implores future generations to evaluate the potential risks of innovation and to build robust safety measures into the heart of all our technologies. May the legacy of Chernobyl guide us to a better understanding of the delicate balance between harnessing energy and preserving life. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the haunting echoes of Chernobyl. If this episode ignited a curiosity or touched your heart, please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement shines a light on our shared history and its lessons for the future. Don't forget, the topic suggestion with the most likes will be considered for a future episode. We're grateful for your support and participation. Until next time, keep exploring the depths of history and its untold stories. Farewell.